So I put it on speaker, and now I can't get it off speaker and back onto headphones because it's not giving me that option. When I press the three little dots, it does. I don't know. Anyway,
Steve, can you back up or turn the camera up so I could get your whole face in? There we go. That's better.
Can you see me now?
Unfortunately, yes, I can see you.
Okay.
You've got what do they say? You got a face for radio?
Yes, I've got a face for radio, and you're putting me on video, man.
I know. I'm sorry. First of all, I want to apologize for all the issues. I didn't know. I didn't know it was that difficult as a recipient to get on. I had it happen one time where it was really hard, and then 2 times where it was really good with this new software. So I didn't know. So that's my bad. That's on me.
Yeah, you got to look at my demographic before you send me some technical,
I know, but I went to Oregon State. They're teaching me don't profile, don't see color, don't do any of that stuff. I'm supposed to be, I can't be ageist.
I gotcha. Okay.
I'm just kidding.
No stereotyping. All right.
No, I muted you and I told my wife, I was like, these dang old people, they just don't know how to deal with this stuff. I'm kidding. No, I'm
trying to teach my older brother how to send texts.
No,
it's impossible. Or to take a picture and send a picture. No, can't be done.
How many siblings do you have?
I've got 2 brothers and a sister.
Okay. And then how old are they? Or what's the age difference? Are they older, younger?
Yeah, my oldest brother is 6 years older than me. My youngest brother's 3 years younger than me.
Okay.
So that's the spread.
Okay. Gotcha. And then what's your sister?
She's 4 years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I think so. We've got a little bit of time. I think what I would like to do is just kind of get the audience familiar with you. So maybe I'll just ask some background questions, and then you tell a little bit about yourself. And then there's a couple things I want to talk about. I want to talk about aliens, Dave Schultz, 1980s Olympics. And do you talk about politics at all? I know we've talked personally about politics, but publicly, do you speak about them?
Sometimes.
Okay. It doesn't.
I can't say I'm an expert.
But it doesn't interfere with work or anything like that. It's not going to get you in trouble with.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Then maybe we'll talk about Trump getting arrested yesterday as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So for those of you guys that don't know, Steve was what year did you graduate from Oklahoma State?
1977.
1977. And you were a national champion that year?
Yes, my senior year.
Okay. At what weight class?
At 142.
All right. Now, at that time, did they allow freshmen to compete at nationals?
Yes. I think that had been going on for about 2 years.
Okay. So but were you able to compete at the nationals your freshman year?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you qualify for the nationals your freshman year?
Yes.
Okay. So what did your college career look like? Because I know you won nationals your senior year, but
right. I was Big 8 champ for 4 years in a row.
Okay.
My freshman year I didn't place. My sophomore year I got a 5th. My junior year I got a 3rd, and senior year I won it.
Okay. And who'd you wrestle in the finals?
Sam Komar from Indiana.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, where are you from originally? Are you from Missouri, born and raised?
I was born in St. Louis, and we lived here until I was, I think, 7 years old. Then we moved to Ohio, lived there for 4 years, Massachusetts for 3 years, and then California. I came to California about halfway through my freshman year in high school. That's when I started wrestling.
Oh, so you started wrestling as a freshman in high school?
Yes, around January 1st, basically. Right, we moved during the Christmas break, and when we landed in California, I started wrestling my first day in high school.
Wow! And then how did your high school career look? Did you kind of get a slow start, or did you get after it right away?
Um, I had a slow start. 2 weeks after going out for wrestling, and remember, I'd never wrestled before. Varsity
Right.
guy gets hurt, JV guy gets injured, and so I have to wrestle for the team. My first match is against the league champion. So as I walk out on the mat, my coach gives me some advice. You know, he says, "Don't get pinned." I
Best advice
followed
ever.
his advice for 52 seconds. So I got pinned my first four matches. My fifth match, I lost 10-0. So that was kind of a bright spot. And then the varsity guy got better, and I was back down to JV.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so that was freshman year. Now what happened? Did you start doing freestyle and Greco and everything in the off season, or?
At the end of my freshman year, I went to a lot of freestyle tournaments.
Okay.
And really, I wrestled more matches in the off season than I did during the season. You know, in California, we had a tournament every weekend.
Yeah, it's huge.
And each of those tournaments had like 300 kids in them. I mean, it was really a good thing for developing as a young wrestler.
Yeah. And then, so how did your California career go after your freshman year? I just want to get a backstory before we get into the Olympics.
I was league champion.
Okay.
My freshman year at JV. So my sophomore year, I made the team. I won the league championship. I beat a guy named Mezafuka in the finals, who had beaten me bad early in the year. He beat me by over 10 points. And, you know, even I was outside in the hall sweating, leaning up against the wall, and he came by and looked down at me and said something bad. And so anyway, I ended up wrestling him in the finals of league, and I did not expect to win because he beat me so bad. What I didn't know is I'd gotten a lot better during the year, and I ended up actually pinning him. So
oh, wow.
I surprised myself. I had no idea I was even going to win. So then from there you go to sectionals, and I didn't place in sectionals. Junior year, I won the Southern section.
Okay.
Of California. It's called the CIF, California Interscholastic Federation.
Yep.
Southern section had 250 wrestling schools, so that was a big deal. But in 1972, that's all the further you could get.
Oh, they didn't do state back then because California was so big.
Yes, there were 10 sections, and that was it. When you won your sectionals, that was it. That's
still how it is for, not for football as far as like state goes, but as far as all state athletes. So you can still win state in football, but you're not an all state athlete. You're an all CIF. So my brother, I have two younger brothers, but one of them was all CIF, and that was the highest he could get.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my senior year, I won state.
Okay.
It was California's first state tournament ever. 1973, 50 years ago. I actually went to. They asked for all the original champions to come to a special ceremony commemorating 50 years of state tournament in California, and so I went to that very end of February, and it was a cool event.
That's cool.
12 of the 14 guys came, including my teammate John Jackson, who was also state champ that year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was neat.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, and my coach Brosford, he also came. We took third as a team, and anyway, the coaches that had done well that year, they got to march too with the champions. So he marched with us.
That's pretty cool. Now, was it still the same? They were just one state champ, and they've never changed it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what.
There's no. It's not divided up into 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. No classes. Yeah. It's all one big state tournament. I like it.
I think that's how. I think every state should do that. Both my brothers wrestled in California, and that's how they did it. And I always liked it. I thought that was always good because in Missouri, it's just better for recruiting, I think, too. You kind of know where you're at. You know where the state is. Missouri is usually a top 10 state for recruiting, but California is usually a top 3 state for recruiting. So you just kind of know, like, okay, the California state champ versus the – I like it better. I think it's a lot better.
You don't have to guess who would have won.
Right, right.
You
don't have to wonder, oh, what if I see this guy in freestyle? It's like, no, I beat him in folk style. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot better. Now, so then you went, was there a big recruiting process for you, or did you know for sure you were going to Oklahoma State?
I knew for sure. And there were 2 other teammates of mine. One had won state. One took second in the CIF Southern section. We were all going to go to Cal Poly together. We went to Von Hitchcock's wrestling camps every summer. But John and I got recruited to go to Oklahoma State. So we went out there. We weren't really going to go there. We just check it out because Cal Poly had won, and I think in 1973 they had won 9 out of the last 10 NCAA championships as a team.
Oh, Cal Poly was that good.
Cal Poly was that good. Well, our coach Chesbro, when he was recruiting us in California, recruiting us in Oklahoma, he said that Oklahoma State won the Nationals last year. And we looked at each other and we knew that couldn't be because Cal Poly had won it. Right. So we challenged him on it. And that's when we found out that there was such a thing as Division II and Division I. He said they won the Division II, but when they went to the Nationals, the Division I Nationals, they took 10th place as a team.
Mm.
And, our eyes got opened. And anyway, we ended up going to Oklahoma State.
Okay. So they were just in that transition process from D2 to D1.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they had won it.
No, I'm sorry. That transition process didn't occur till later. Probably, well, I shouldn't say because I don't know, but it was quite a bit later.
Oh, so that's back when you could compete Division II and then go to the Division I national championship.
That's right. The number one guy, the champion went for sure. And then they received, depending on the year, 5 or 6 wild cards.
Okay. Do you like that process? Do you wish they would keep it that way, or do you think it's good being completely separated?
No, I don't. I know it's not comparing apples with apples because they have a very different. They have different rules determining who is eligible. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier to become eligible in D2 than D1.
Right.
But all the same, I did like it when D2 it had hope of going to the D1s. Mm. I like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I think it weakened D1 when they were eliminated because there are a lot of notable D2 guys that ended up winning the D1s.
Right. Yeah, it definitely spread out the talent level, I think, at those times because, now there's probably not too many D2 guys that could do, some of the champions probably couldn't even qualify at some of the not regionals, but what are they? The conference tournaments.
Yeah.
I'm sure they probably could, but I think they would have a run for their money with some of those top 15 guys as opposed to back then where it was probably a little bit more spread out.
Yeah, when that rule came into effect, it forced colleges that were good at wrestling, like Cal Poly, to go D1.
Right.
And go through that whole process.
Gotcha. So now you go to Oklahoma State. You have a really funny story that you've told me before. I think you tell this story quite a bit. So just for context for anybody listening, the first time I met Steve, he, my friend, one of my coaches, Jerry Inman. John was my teammate. Jerry was my coach. He said, "Hey, we've got this guy coming in. His name's Steve, and we'd love for you to introduce him at FCA. He's going to speak." And you came and wrestled with me, and I was a 220 pounder. I don't know. What do you normally weigh? 150, 155?
Back then, yeah, about 160.
Okay. And there's an age difference between us. Like I got second in state. Like I was, ranked number 1 or 2 or something like that in state and at 220. And so you had to come in, and I had known who you were because I had listened to Greg Warren in the past, and I had heard about this guy named Steve in Greg Warren's comedy. So I was like, oh, okay. So I'm going to get to, see what Warren was talking about. And you came in and you beat my ass, like beat me up and down, like just demolished me. And then the next day I had to introduce you to all the Christians at Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I just felt like, wow, this, I feel like I just introduced my school bully to my parents at dinner or something. Like, hey, this is, my bully. He beats me up every day. It was hard for me, but that was my first introduction to you, Steve. And I think I told you that story. So fast forward 4 or 5 years later, I'm at the Oregon State University and I go on a mission trip, and lo and behold, who's on the mission trip with us? It's Steve. And we're going to Azerbaijan and Georgia. And I was like, oh, well, we're going to see if he can still do what he did. And I think I, probably got you back, but it was a little bit unfair at that point.
I picked my wrestling partners more carefully now.
Well, there's definitely, it's crazy how much of a difference it is between college and high school. Like I didn't do much in college, but my brother, who was a very highly accoladed high school wrestler in California, like I mopped the floor with him. But now he's at Ohio State. Like he's going to be beating the heck out of me in probably like 2 months. So it's all this, it's just such a huge learning curve.
Yes. Yeah. There's a big difference.
It's crazy. So okay. So just a little backstory there, but you have a very funny Dave Schultz story. Do you not?
Which one?
So yeah, well, you probably have a few. You probably know some ins and outs. But so there's one story I know you told me on our mission trip. Actually, you might have told me this back in Branson. But so Dave was an incoming freshman when you graduated, correct?
That's right. I had just graduated. I was one of the graduate assistants the next year, and Dave, my first year as a graduate assistant, came to Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and you had to do an alumni match. Is that correct?
Well, actually, when Dave first got there, we wrestled a lot together, starting, on September 1st. After about 2 months of wrestling with Dave every day, we have what's called the orange and black match. Mm-hmm. So the coach divided up the team, the 2 best guys in each weight class, into 2 teams that we wrestle each other. And that year, Dave didn't have a worthy challenger. There was nobody that could come close to him. So the coach wanted me to wrestle Dave, even though, no more eligibility. He wanted me to wrestle Dave. He knew that, this incoming freshman, probably one of the most highly recruited guys, high school wrestlers ever, wrestling against the defending national champ, that was going to draw a crowd. So I wasn't real interested in wrestling Dave. Dave was 2 weight classes bigger than me. And I've got an unusual style of wrestling. So when he first got there, I could use my moves on him, stuff he'd never seen before.
Right.
But after 2 months of going at it and him stopping me, and I mean, he was like a professor of wrestling. He was a real student of wrestling. He'd stop you and say, hey, what'd you just do? And I'd show it to him, and he'd go, well, how could you defend that? And well, I'd show him that too. So anyway, after really, it was 2.5 months of wrestling with Dave, I didn't have any more secrets. He was bigger and stronger than me. And, but coach wanted me to wrestle him. So that's what I did.
And how did that go?
Oh, you want me to tell the rest of the story?
Yeah. Finish the story. You can't stop.
Can't stop there.
You can't stop with the conversation you had.
At Oklahoma State, if you added up NCAA wrestling started in 1928,
Mhm.
and I got there in 1973. Oklahoma State had won over 50% of the team championships during that span.
It's crazy.
And think about it, 90 individual titles, NCAA championship titles. So anyway, they were used to winners and winning. And if you were a winner, they liked you. If you didn't win, they didn't like you as much. I remember my freshman year, there were two guys who had lost all 5 matches in a road trip up north. You know, we went to Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. These guys had lost all 5 matches. When they came back home, in our, it was the athletic dorm, Iba Hall. We had a parking lot there. Both of their front windshields were broken, you know, like with a baseball bat. On both of their windows was a note that said, "We don't like losers. Don't lose anymore."
Wow.
Well, thankfully, my fans, they loved me. I lost 2 matches as a freshman, but in the next 3 years, I never lost a match in Gallagher Hall.
Oh, wow.
So when they announced the announcer said my name as I went out on the mat, I always got a standing ovation. And that night when wrestling Dave, I got a standing ovation, like always. So I'm wrestling Dave, and he gets a takedown, and already, you know, there's some folks cheering for Dave. And as the match goes on, Dave gets a couple more points. And by the second period, the fans are solidly behind Dave. In the third period, at some point, I get a hold of, I go in on a single, I get a hold of Dave's leg, and I'm pulling in so hard to take him down that I broke my own rib.
Oh.
So I don't call a timeout. The referee stops the match. He sees I'm injured. And now, you know, there are people in the crowd that are whistling and booing, saying he's faking it, you know, make him get out there and wrestle. Well, you know, I mean, there were guys who grabbed a knee whenever they got tired. But in 4 years of wrestling in front of that crowd, I never did that once. For me, it was only forward. So I got up, I finished the match. Dave won 7-2. And anyway, the crowd went crazy. I'd never heard that much noise in Gallagher Hall. And even my coach had Dave up on his shoulder, parading him around the match before we even shook hands to, you know, officially finish the match. So anyway, I learned from that. I thought the crowd loved me. And I realized they love the way I wrestle. They love when I score points for the team. They love to be the fan of a champion. But personally, you know, they didn't really care about me that much. Mm-hmm. And they'd found a new hero. And, Dave could wrestle now for 4 years. He could score a lot of team points and win a lot of championships, you know, for the fans.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't want to denigrate the fans at Oklahoma State. I am really thankful I had the opportunity to wrestle there. I'm thankful for what happened that night. Even I realized from that I had been wrestling for my own glory. And although I was raised in a Christian home and believed in God and loved Jesus my whole life, I had put wrestling first in my life. And I was looking for, championships. I was looking for respect from the crowd. And I realized, that pursuing those things in the end were really an empty pursuit. Mm-hmm. So that's really was a turning point in my life that made me realize my relationship with God was more important than anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So from that point, did that kind of give you a, because I had a point in my Christian walk, and it was about maybe my freshman or sophomore year of college, where my relationship with Christ went from a rules-based system to a true relationship. Was that kind of your come to Jesus moment per se, where it changed and you started seeing a lot of growth because you started to see it as an actual relationship with somebody sitting next to you, not just some, big brother in the sky watching over you?
Yeah. Um, in the Bible, King Solomon writes the book of Ecclesiastes.
Right.
He's got more money than anybody else in the world.
Right.
It actually itemizes how much gold he has, and silver was like sand, it says, during his reign. He liked horses. He had 10,000. He went down to Egypt and got the best, probably Arabian horses down there. He liked women. He had 1,000. So he's collecting like supermodels from all over the known world.
Right.
We download music from Apple. Well, he collected the best musicians. He had live entertainment anytime he wanted.
Right.
He had literally everything any man would ever want.
Sure.
He was the most powerful man in the world at his time. But sprinkled throughout that book of Ecclesiastes, as he's listing all these things, he keeps writing things like vanity, vanity, all is vanity, emptiness and striving after the wind.
Right.
So certainly not like King Solomon, but in my own way through wrestling, I came up to exactly the same conclusions at a relatively young age.
Mm-hmm.
And so it brought me to a place where, yes, now I'm ready to commit my life to Jesus Christ. And I was open for what was coming. And that was, a couple guys from Athletes in Action sat down, challenged me to join the team. And that really prepared me to say, yes, I want to be a part of that team.
Now, during this time, so you competed in the Olympic trials in 1980, that's correct?
Yes.
And you won the Olympic trials in 1980.
I won the trial tournament in 1980. After that, then the top guys had another tournament and at the training camp itself. And I didn't actually go to the training camp.
Okay. And that was because of the boycott?
Yeah.
Explain that. Just explain that.
I was at the trials in 1979, the World Team Trials. I hurt my shoulder. It was like the worst summer I've ever had. You work out really, really hard. I didn't make the team. I hurt my shoulder. And now I get the opportunity to do that again in 1980, but we're not going anywhere. So anyway, right or wrong, I decided not to go. In the spirit of boycott, I boycotted.
You boycotted further. You went one step further than they did.
Yeah. So
now
I didn't go.
Yeah. Now I wasn't alive then. This was in response to the Cold War, right? Jimmy Carter, because it was in Russia, or it was supposed to be in the Olympic Games were in Moscow, right? And Jimmy Carter did not want to support anything Russian because of the Cold War, and so they pulled the American teams out of all Olympic competition.
Actually, part of it was they were in the midst of expansionism again. The Soviets had gone into Afghanistan, and so we were actually boycotting because of the war in Afghanistan.
Oh, okay. It's funny how things turn, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
What a 180 we did there in just a couple decades.
Yeah.
But okay, gotcha. And so you boycotted from there. So now you hurt your shoulder. You did not make the team in 79. You probably would have made the team, but it wouldn't have mattered. You won the trials. you're not competing for anything. You're just competing to win the world team trials or the Olympic team trials in 1980. Now, is after 1980, were you done wrestling and you were prepared? Is that when you went into full-time ministry?
I was already with Athletes in Action.
Okay.
I joined my wife and I, Cindy and I, joined a small branch of the wrestling team that was located in Vienna, Austria. There was an idea by a guy who was in our ministry, Bud Hinkson, because of wrestling and the importance of wrestling in a lot of the Eastern European countries. He figured we could go there as a team when missionaries were not allowed to come into communist countries back during the Cold War. We could come in and operate relatively freely and be able to share our faith. So that was the premise. So I ended up joining that team. And so for 3 years, or almost 3 years, 81, 82, and 83, I wrestled. We lived in Vienna, Austria, and wrestled in a lot of different international tournaments in Eastern Europe, along with spending time at national training camps. We'd be there for 1 and 2 weeks at a time.
Gotcha. I would like to talk about the missionary aspect, but we had spoken about doing another podcast because that revolves around your book. Now, what is your book called?
It's called The Unlikely Missionary.
Okay.
And then the subheading is Lessons Learned Along the Way.
Okay. And when does that come out? And it's on Amazon, right? You had a publisher and everything?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So hopefully it'll come out on Amazon within a month.
Okay. Within a month. Okay. So why don't we do this? Let's, in about a month, we'll circle back to that topic. But there's a couple things here that I wrote down that I would like to talk about. We had a conversation when I think we were in either Georgia or Azerbaijan, one of the two. We were probably trying to get ice cream somewhere. I know you're a big ice cream guy. And it was an everyday thing. Like, you guys know a good spot for some ice cream.
Yeah.
You can't tell by looking at you, but you are definitely a sweet tooth. With all the alien stuff, the testifying before Congress, the alien sightings, all these pilots that have come out now and, saying whatever, the videos that are surfacing, you have a very interesting take on what aliens are and where they come from. And it kind of ties in with our faith. And ever since I heard you say it, I've since adopted the same mindset on it. What is your explanation for what is going on right now? And do you still have the same explanation?
Yeah. All the testifying that's going on right now, I've got a real good friend at my church who was pretty high up in Air Force. And I asked him about it. And he said that none of those guys are speaking from firsthand accounts. It's all things that they've heard from somebody else. Mm-hmm. So, and oh boy, I can't remember his name, but anyway, the guy that's probably the most important of those three witnesses he doesn't have any firsthand. He hasn't seen these things firsthand. He hadn't witnessed these things firsthand. They're all things that he's heard from other people. So anyway, I don't know what's going on, and it's hard to cipher through, especially secondhand accounts of what's going on. But I was, late at night when you turn AM radio on, you listen to Coast to Coast, and there was a guy talking about alien abductions, and he had documented over 1,000, said there'd been over 1 million alien abductions, and not just people from America, but people literally from all over the world were having these experiences. And he had documented 1,000 of he interviewed 1,000 people who had been abducted. Mm-hmm. So that was what his book was about. And they had similar experiences. So then, I mean, within a month of that, I heard about another guy who had written a book. He's a Christian, and he documents 200 people who were in the process of being abducted, and they call out to Jesus, and the abductors, the aliens, they leave immediately at the name of Jesus.
Real quick, do you happen to know the name of this book?
I wish I could remember. That's why I'm not an expert to talk about this, but
right.
It made me realize that there's more going on than meets the eye. That there's some kind of a spiritual aspect to it, and
right.
and also I don't know if the guy that had the account of the 1,000 people that were abducted actually put it in his book or not, but a common thread also is that these aliens, so-called aliens, they bash Jesus. They don't bash Muhammad, they don't bash Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jesus. So that makes me think that it's demonic in nature, and the fact that when you call out the name Jesus, they leave. That would make it spiritual. Also,
yeah. It's I think, unless there's multiple books, which I don't know if there is, but I've heard. I saw a YouTube video recently of a prominent YouTuber that was talking about this, and he was saying the same thing. But he was saying that he doesn't believe that these are extraterrestrial. He believes they're interdimensional, because the Bible talks about, our battle's not against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual powers in the heavenly realms. And so that sounds like, where heaven and hell, they could be in a different dimension. And so he starts explaining this, and he starts referencing what I think is the same book, of, people just saying, Jesus, help me, or, and referencing the name, and then the experience ending.
Right.
One thing he also referenced too, and I'll find the name of the book, and maybe I'll link it in this podcast so people don't just think we're shooting in the wind. But one thing he also referenced too is that, and I think you and I have had a conversation. Maybe I'm going to let you go here in a minute, but maybe we'll pick it up on the next podcast. But divination. And how a lot of these people, it's similar experience to people that do DMT or do some kind of psychedelic, where some of these aliens either bash Jesus or pretend to be Jesus, but there's always a catch. It's not like the Jesus we know of the Bible. There's always something that comes with it, and it gives something similar to the Bible. But what he talked about in this video, and what the book describes, and again, I'll find the book, is that everybody that had one of these experiences, everybody beforehand had some type of encounter or interest in the occult at some point, or DMT, divination, and then later on got more deeply involved in it by either going to cult meetings, getting involved in some type of witchcraft, which is just interesting because you hear these stories of like, oh, there was just love and peace, and it sounds a lot like mysticism, and then they later start diving into it, but you don't hear a lot of them that start following Jesus. And so it's just very weird, and it does seem very spiritual in nature, not extraterrestrial. But ever since we had a conversation about this in Georgia, I've that's been my take on the whole thing, and I wanted you to expand on it. But yeah,
I've heard that people who go on ayahuasca trips, that it brings you into that spiritual world, actually the demonic world, and that if you you're into aliens, you will find aliens in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah. It's because I hear people that they kind of want to know Jesus, but they don't want Jesus the way that Jesus is, right? Which is his standard, not yours. And they get a Jesus that fits their standard. He's okay with the homosexuality. He's okay with trans. It's just as long as you live peacefully in love and do all this stuff. So yeah,
created Jesus that you're comfortable with.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm not saying that it's not aliens. I'm not saying it's demonic, but I'm saying I believe personally that it is, based on the evidence that I've seen from the experiences. It's a little fishy that if somebody says, "Oh, Jesus, help me," and they're going through this, and every single one of them that does that, the experience ends, plain stop, they go away.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
And I've had dreams in the past. I had one in particular, I think my junior year of college, where I felt a situation happening. It was clearly a dream, but I was in an airport, and it was not the most real dream, but it had the most real like fear that I've ever felt. I was in an airport and I was walking, and there was two individuals with masks on, like scary, demonic looking masks. And I yelled Jesus in my sleep, and both like screamed and fled. And then the dream ended and I woke up. And I've never had an experience where I was so sure there was something nefarious going on, something demonic, something spiritual. And, you know, the fact that I woke up and the entire experience ended, and especially because I was like that day I was actually ministering to some people. I had ministered to two atheists, and I'd sat down with them on two separate occasions. And so it just seemed very coincident, or, you know, a little bit suspicious that the timing of that as well.
Right.
But
yeah.
All right, Steve, you got any, I really appreciate you doing this, by the way. Sorry we couldn't get it started for, 30 or 40 minutes there, but it was definitely a good conversation. I enjoyed having you on. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything you would want people to know? Oh my gosh. No. Steve. He just left. I think his Wi-Fi cut out. Yeah, let me call him, and I'll keep it on. Nope. Hey, no worries. Hey, I've still got the microphone recording, but I was just asking. Well, you can just say it over the phone. I was just asking if you had any final thoughts or anything that you wanted to share. I know we're pressed for time a little bit, but
yeah, I will say that I was glad that I did join Athletes in Action. It was a group of guys I needed to be around. I was very spiritually immature, and I had a long way to go. I wanted to use my talents now for God's glory, and I didn't have a clue what that meant. So being around those guys, God used them to really change my life and teach me a lot of things. So I was thankful for wrestling and the way God used it in my life to actually point me to Him. Anyway.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Steve, thank you so much, man. Thank you for that. Let's get back on the podcast. The book is pretty long. Can you give me some stories, like text me some stories and some highlights, and I'll try to read through them all. I'll try to read through the whole book, but if I can't, at least I'll have some highlights to read through first.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Awesome, brother.
I'll give you a couple page numbers.
Okay. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you, man. Love you, bro.
All right.
Have a good rest of your day. God bless.